Hey guys, today I'm working on a Lenovo S340. This one has a loose broken power jack. That's the input where you plug the power cord into, and so this thing needs to be taken apart, and I'm going to replace that power jack. So the first step here is to remove all the bottom screws. This uses a hex star kind of screwdriver, so if you need to make sure you have one of those laying around. So here I'm just taking a small guitar pick or thin rather guitar pick and just going around the edges, just getting that bottom case popped up and ready to remove. It's just held in by some tabs, so you just have to go around all over the edges and it'll come right up. And I have that little pad underneath there to make sure that the back lid doesn't get scratched up. So that's what that is, if you're wondering. So now that that's removed, I know this laptop had no power to it at all, but just in case the laptop has power to it or some kind of charge, you want to make sure you disconnect the battery cable. That's the cable I'm pulling on right there. And just make sure that's disconnected. I actually didn't end up disconnecting it all the way because I know the laptop was completely dead, but just to be safe, it's always good no matter what computer you're on to make sure you take that battery plug out. And now I'm just removing two of the hinge screws. The hinge forms over the motherboard and over the power jack, so it needs to be removed. Then the trick is to just open the laptop up a little bit, so then you have that hinge slightly open. I'm just screwing a hard drive screw back in there that I found laying there. So now I'm just lifting up the laptop just a little bit. That's enough to pop up that hinge, and then I'll take my thumb and just open it up all the way. So here I'm just going to unplug the DC jack. And the first thing I notice immediately is that the housing that holds the jack into place is physically broken. This is typical from a trip or a fall, and that housing is not going to work unless you use some kind of a glue or something to get it back into place. Sometimes you can push it back into place like I attempted there, but in the end this one's going to need some glue to make sure it's stable. And so here I'm just installing the new jack, and I'm going to quickly find out that that thing's going to be kind of floating around a little bit in there. And it might work for a short-term solution, but I don't like to do things for short-term. I like to make sure it's going to be good for a while. So in a second here I'm going to be getting some glue out to glue that housing back together. So it goes in there nice and snug, but I know it's just a matter of time before it's going to fail again. And you can kind of see that broken housing there. It's just off center from that little piece. So I'm just going to pop the new jack that I just put on there back up so I can glue that housing back together. And the kind of glue that I use, the company that makes it is Loctite, and it's called Super Glue Ultra Gel Control. And the reason I use that gel glue is because it's not as runny as a lot of the other ones, so it'll kind of stay in place being a gel, and it won't just run down into the bottom of the casing there. So after I put the glue on, I'm just trying to reconstruct the housing a little bit with that flathead. Just trying to get it back into place. And then that way I can put a little bit of glue on the other side of the housing too, so then that jack will just be rock solid from both sides. So you can see that gel glue right in between those two spots there. And the DC jack has two little plastic black tabs, so it's perfect to put the gel right where those two plastic black tabs are going to go. So now I just route that cable through there and just make sure I got that jack. The trick with gluing these jacks into place too is you need to make sure that you hold it into place for just a little bit and let that glue sit. I've had times where I just put the jack back in and then you let it go, it can kind of flop out of place. So what I'm doing here is just putting my finger down on it and holding that housing into place to make sure that it dries properly and correctly in the right position. If you don't do that, it can kind of flop around, and then the worst case scenario is when you glue it into place and you can't plug it in from the outside, and then you have to kind of break the glue up, and you know that glue is really strong, so it's not a fun thing to have to redo. So here I'm just holding that jack into place, and even after the video I held it into place a little bit longer, part of it that you don't see, probably a few minutes, just to make sure that glue sets and that jack is set in the right position. Alright, so now you can see that jack is into place. Like I said, I'm going to push that housing back just a little bit. You can see where that crack is, and just to make sure that it sets properly. Just really want to make sure that thing's nice and snug in there. But if you guys have any questions, just leave them in the comments. This is a repair that I do for $69 parts and labor at www.pcrepairhelp.net. Thank you guys so much for watching.